welcome into Parent Power Hour. I am Kristen, and it is just a little bit after 10 a.m., and we are here on Monday morning here in Dallas, Texas, coming at you live for Parent Power Hour, hosted by New Minds TV. Welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you're here, and wow, what a weekend. Guys, we actually had a weekend. I'm not sure if you felt like it was a thing or not, but it was. It really did happen. I'm just going to scoot back a little bit. I'm feeling a little bit close. All right, now that feels a little better. Yeah, welcome in. This is Parent Power Hour. Everybody else get settled in too. I have to get settled in. You have to get settled in. Parent Power Hour is about finding time for ourselves, creating time for ourselves, being intentional so that we can better ourselves and better serve those and show up for those around us that we love the most. Good morning, Shay. Ooh, coffee. Oh man, I haven't even had that yet. Just a little coffee emoticon next to her, or emoji next to her. Little smiley face emoji, and oh, I'm salivating just thinking about it. But that is something fun that I did for myself this weekend. So when we left each other on Friday, I was encouraging you to find a way to kind of get out there, put yourself out there, not get out physically if you're not okay with that, but to do something out there in your life to make sure that the weekends are special, to find something that you're giving a break from yourself from the Monday through Friday, because as we all know right now, we're here in this quarantine. If you're watching this recorded later, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I remember that. That happened that back in April. But here we are, and it can all really start to run together, can't it? And we don't want that to be something for our, at least as far as like our regular new normal, to just not have any sense of separation from the work week to our weekend. So I encourage you to find something special to do with your family, for yourself, something that might distinguish the difference between the weekend and the weekdays. So Shay's already had 2 cups of coffee. Wow, so jealous. Tell me, what did you get up to this weekend? What are some things? I see we've got quite a few people on here. I know we also have some people that are on the other side of the world, and they've already started their work week. Friday, Saturday is their weekend, so here we are on Monday morning for us. So I bet they're already in the little bit of a groove of their work week, because they finished up Sunday for work and now they're heading into Monday evening, right? I think I'm doing my timing right. So yeah, what did you all get up to? What kind of special things did you do? One thing that I did was I went to one of my favorite local coffee shops. They have 2 options right now. You can either call their number, well, actually 3 options. You can call their number and go, way ahead of time and tell them what time you're going to be there, and they'll have your to-go order ready for you. They can either bring it out to your car. You just call the same number and say, hey, I'm out here. They don't have a drive-through because they're a local shop. And yeah, if you pull up into the parking lot there, you can see that their number is out in the front, and you call them, you say, I'm here, and they bring your coffee out to you. Totally contactless in the sense that, they're wearing their masks. You can wear yours and, swipe your card. Don't have to touch anybody except for the handoff of that bag. They also have the option where you can go in physically. They have all of their to-go orders on what's actually a bookshelf they used to have a lot of their products on, just inside the door. So you can walk inside and pick up your bag and go, because of course you've paid for it online. And then within a certain boundaries of their coffee shop, they actually have the option to deliver. I don't live that close. And also I was needing, like I said, to find a way to make the weekend special. Hey Natalie, she's in here, and so is Graham. Good morning, Graham. Good morning, Natalie. We're just talking about what are the things I'd love to see in your comments that you did, either for yourself or your family, that to separate the weekends from the weekdays. I was just sharing how I went to one of my favorite local coffee shops. It's not that super close to me, but right now I personally am working to do things that are, or when I am buying outside or getting food outside, that they're local places instead of chains. And not that chains are not also needing our help, but I feel like especially for coffee shops, Starbucks is everyone's backing off. They really are. And even the big places like the Starbucks and the chains, they're backing off. Also, think about that impact for our local places. And I really actually prefer like local coffee shops than I do the big chains because of the flavor. Personal taste here. So that's what I did this past weekend. I was driving back from Trader Joe's as well, which is also another way that I celebrate a weekend. It's a comfort zone for me to go in there and just, take my mask and wipe everything down and buy the stuff. They always have everything. Don't everybody rush out though. Go get all your stuff. But yeah, so those are some things that I did. Let's see what else did other people do. I did about 7 loads of laundry, watched some shows, she says, drove through the country with the boys. Oh, how nice. Let's see what else. She says it was nice and relaxing. And they also introduced Asher, who's just a little bit over 1 year old, to chalk. Oh my goodness, we have been so creative with chalk. I know that first week or two of quarantine, there were the chalk geometric collages that were showing up on people's garages, and seeing that all over social media. And that was really awesome for like older kids, right? So kiddos like Asher, our kiddos here at the house are 4 and 2. And speaking of the 2-year-old, today is his birthday, April 20th. Yay! Oh my goodness, he's actually 2. Yeah, it's amazing. We celebrated yesterday with the fam, small little thing. So chalk, yes. I have, and of course, as Shay's finding out, they really just like to break the chalk, don't they? They just like to after a while, just breaking it is fun too. So what I found is some hacks on how to turn it into chalk paint. Pinterest, of course. And I like crafty things like that as well. And my sister's like, go ahead. She's like, I don't. She's like, yeah, you want chalk pieces and to make new chalk? Go right ahead. But yeah, Shay, I can tell you about that stuff. Crush them up, add some water, yeah. There's a few different steps, all stuff that you have at home that you don't have to mess around with. So here we are. It's Monday. Today is actually episode 26 for us here. That's so fun. We're almost to 30. And, the big 3-0, 30, flirty, and thriving, right? That's what it is. So that'll be by the end this week. But last week we were talking a lot about change. And, let's get real. We're talking about change like every week or every episode here on Parent Power Hour. Because whether you're a parent or not, we're going to settle in with this as well. I know we've got some people in here that don't have kiddos of their own, or they are a teacher, or kiddos are not of the elementary school age anymore. They're beyond that. So just wanted to clarify that as well. And I'll do better at that more up front before people step away. That while it's called Parent Power Hour, the tips and tools that are here are for all of us. And I'm not a parent personally. I'm not myself. However, I was a teacher for over 15 years in schools, both public and private. Have master's in education. I have all those things behind my name and training, and also have really done. Because I'm not a parent. I'll put it this way. Because I'm not an active parent, I definitely am in a role of caregiving for my nephews that are 4 and 2. But because I'm not an active parent in that way, or a physical parent in that way, I do have more time to dig into some of these concepts that I know that if you had an extra 30 minutes in your life, there's lots of things you could be doing with that extra 30 minutes. And so what I hope to do here is to pull from all the resources that I have been looking to and skilling up with, and I've gone to conferences and I've read the books and I've listened to the podcast. So I do have the luxury of cultivating all of that for you and passing on what I feel and what I hear you saying that you need. And what I notice that places that you're commenting on, in our comments here that show me that, okay, they're needing more information on X, Y, and Z, or we are still living in this phase of fear, or this phase of anticipated stress. And that's actually where we landed last week, in that we want to start. We spent a lot of the first 4 weeks here in Dallas. We're on our 5th week now, and we spent the first 4 weeks, the first semester of quarantine, reacting, right? Of readjusting, and circumstances were thrown at us and we had to change. We had to change because there was no option, but it was thrown at us. And so last week was the beginning of our journey. Instead of reacting to change, is preparing for change, knowing that in our pretend world, in 4 more weeks, the lift is going to happen, and the communities are going to be open again, and such and such. This is our pretend world, okay? I'm not saying that's an escape world. I'm saying what I am saying is that for our scope of our conversation here, let's pretend like in 4 more weeks, the lift happens. Everything's lifted. All of the restrictions are lifted, and what we're hoping to do is, or what we are planning to do, is to prepare for change. So last week we talked about what that meant, and a lot of times that means accepting change, right? Accepting the fact that things aren't going to be ever the same way that they're going to be again. And we really unpack that in, our abilities and our motivation. So go back to that if any of that sounds like, what? I don't understand. Go back to that from last week, because this week we're going to dive really deep into, you saw in the title today, into the Rising Strong process. And 100% this is me sharing, kind of think of it like a book club, okay? I'm sharing with you a high-level vision, or high-level review of the Rising Strong process. Rising Strong is written by Brené Brown. She's PhD, LMSW. She has done over 20 years of research. It's just, and she's an incredible resource for bettering ourselves. And the subtitle to the book, and let me actually put that up there for you. The subtitle of the book is How the Ability to Reset Transforms the Way That We Live, the Way That We Love, the Way We Parent, and the Way We Lead. Okay? So first of all, I'm just going to acknowledge the fact that my screenshot over here and my presentation, I know it could be bigger. Let me know if it's blinking for you also, because on my end it looks like it's blinking, but I kind of am not really sure what's happening with the connection here. So if it blinks too much, let me know and I'll switch back to just me. So this is what the subtitle of Rising Strong is, and this is where we're going to dig in deep. I'm just going to pause for a second because I think I might be having some technical difficulties. So let me see if you guys can catch up, and I'll check in on some comments while we're doing that. All right, so Shay, I know you're in here as a participant this morning, but if you can also give me either a thumbs up or maybe even send me a direct message to let me know if everything's coming through clearly. I'm having a lot of delay, it looks like, on what I think is my end of things, but I'll just keep going, and if there's too much of a delay, I'm sure Shay will let me know. So we're digging in here to the Rising Strong process. There are 10 steps to the Rising Strong process, and or the practice of Rising Strong. And we're starting with this today, and I anticipate that we'll be able to actually unpack all 10 throughout the week. I definitely have ways that they are condensed, and we've actually talked about a lot of them anyways. We're just going a bit deeper. So, let's see, we've got a comment. So I'm venting a bit. She says, I feel guilty that my kids are goofing off. They're not learning anything new from e-learning. It's such a waste of a half of a school year. This is my anxiety, and the next fall they won't be ready. adjusting our expect. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's Gina, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. 100%. Hang tight with us. What I hear you saying is that your expectations are not meeting the reality because of the constraints, because of the conditions of the learning, right? And you feel guilty that your kids are goofing off. What we've done here, a lot of work on Parent Power Hour, is to restructure our thinking. All right, thanks, Shay. So she says there is a bit of a delay, but all right, as long as everything's coming through clearly, thank you so much. What we are working through here, Gina, is how can we begin to reframe our thinking? And wow, this is huge. Like you just said, I feel guilty and I've got anxiety about it. Those things are 100% not light approaches. That's not a light thought process. And number one, you're already doing the right thing. What do we say here on Parent Power Hour? Name it to tame it. Because when we don't name the way that we're feeling, guilt, anxiety, then we can't get that thing out there, and we are holding that in, and there's shame that comes with that, right? A lot of us don't name it to tame it. And thank you, Gina, for taking that strength and that strong step, even to just comment here for us today, because I know that there's everybody. Raise your hand. How many of you are dealing with this anxiety? Preach. This is why we're here. How many of us are dealing with the guilt of things being different, of worrying about the growth and learning and development of not only our children, but our families and ourselves, and all of the possible changes that are going to be happening to our entire community. I know you're probably getting glitches as well, so I'm on the screen that I'm sharing, so I'm going to switch back to just my face. Now you can see that that's the title, and then you can also see, I think that's the behind the title of the book there that you might be seeing that glitch on is a picture of Marie Forleo, who's also another author and podcast. I mean, amazing powerhouse woman. She's a little bit more business focused as far as like how to be a better business leader, start your own entrepreneur, resources and that sort of thing. So that's the picture. That's her face that you keep seeing glitching in back there. But hey, you know what that means? That she's in the background cheering for us, and she's saying, "Go for it! Yes, lean into that stuff, that hard stuff. Call it like it is. Say that it gives you anxiety. Say that you feel guilty about it. Say that it's hard. Acknowledge that." Because that is the first step. That is the first step to being able to move forward. And that second step that's determining your strength is your ability to pivot, to change, is our ability to pivot and to change. Last week we talked about cultivating certain abilities and skills that are not necessarily things like measurable outcome learning opportunities on worksheets for your kids, or we're having to really adjust and pivot the way that we think about learning, not only in our schools but in our homes, not only for our children but also for ourselves. And so cultivating an ability like that takes courage, takes consistency, takes practice, 100% practice. Okay, you can't see it, but my shirt today, I'm trying to wear like a graphic tee on Mondays to pump myself up and to pump you guys up. I have to cultivate that a lot. You guys have already heard me give my experience background, and I've got some shame spiraling that happens a lot when I start talking to you as parents and Parent Power Hour. Because I'm not a parent, and for me that's a shame thing that I'm bringing to you, because I'm worried that you may not be able to receive what I have to share with you because I'm not a parent. However, what I do know is that the things that I do have to share with you can strengthen you as an individual, and that in turn strengthens your parenting. And when you strengthen yourself and find time to better yourself, like I start every single Parent Power Hour episode, then you are taking the time to strengthen your family and those around you that you love, whether they are your children, people that you're in relationships, spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends, people that you work with. My shirt says, "She believed she could." Wait. Yep, she believed she could, so she did. There's the top of it. She believed she could, and so she did. It's actually a workout shirt. which is another reason for the jacket. And also, I love jean jackets. Hello, who doesn't love a good jean jacket? I think that's probably, if my mom were watching right now, she'd be like, oh, you 80s babies. So here we are. We're going to lean into this Rising Strong process, okay? So buckle up. This is practice. This is deep understanding. Throughout the week, we're going to review all 10 of them. And I threw up that's not exactly a nice thought there. This is all coming from Brené Brown's book, Rising Strong. I recommend, if you can't read it, then at least listen to it, take pieces of it and listen to it piece at a time. If you can't do either of those things, that's why you're here. I got you, okay? So step one, and listen up because we've already had some comments about that this morning. The first step to the Rising Strong process is, Braving Strong. Braving Strong, Rising Strong, they're sort of interchangeable. Is that if we are brave enough, often enough, we will fall. This is the physics of vulnerability. If we're brave enough, often enough, we will fall. Because this is the physics of vulnerability. Falling is failure. Failure is when we fall, we're on our path, we're headed somewhere, something trips us up, we fall. We have our goals in mind, we're going somewhere in life, we have expectations for ourselves, we have expectations for our children and our families, we have expectations for our work life, and something comes along and hit the brakes, pivot. We got to change directions. We've got to go somewhere else. We start to fall. That's failure. Life is guaranteed to have failures. You're guaranteed to, let me adjust this up a little bit, get out of the way over here. You are guaranteed to fail. Not at life, not at every single thing that comes your way, but that is life. That is learning. We are guaranteed to experience hard things because that's learning, because that's change, because that's pivoting, because that's life. If life is staying the same all the time, then that is not a sign that you're living. Living a life, I'm going to switch back to my face again so we don't have these weird glitches. You're guaranteed to go through the hard things, and you are brave enough to take the risk, because as we unpacked way long time ago in Parent Power Hour, you're brave enough to take the risk because your desire is greater than your fears, because the things that are more important to you are greater than the things that you think you might be losing. Your focus on what is important to you, your children's education, your family values, your focus on those things is greater than all of the fears of, oh my gosh, my kid's going to be 3 grade levels behind in fall. I just know they are. Or, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to go to Trader Joe's again without wearing a mask. And that makes me think about 100+ degree weather here in Texas, which makes me think about sweating, and I hate sweating. Sweating puts me in such a bad mood, which is so weird for this girl, right? I lived in the desert for 8 years, you guys. I lived in Dubai for 8 years, and I hated the heat before I lived there. And now I definitely hate it even more, just because 120 degrees feels the same as 98 degrees. Oh my word. I will tell you that this morning I woke up and it's about 55, 56 here today, and I wrote it down in my gratitude journal. I write down 5 things I'm grateful for every day, and one of the things I wrote down was it's 55 degrees. I love cooler, mild weather. I got off track there, but we're gonna be trying to anticipate all the things that are gonna get in our way. We are, because we care about the things that happen to our families. We care about the educational development of our children. We care about we're obviously going to be affected by changes that happen in the economy, access to groceries, blah 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 blah. I mean, you can go in for days and end up spinning. But the thing here is that you don't focus on that fear. You don't focus on the what ifs. You don't focus on, oh my gosh, this is going to be this and because then you You shame spiral yourself into feeling trapped, into feeling that there's no way, into feeling that there's no recovery. And so instead, you focus on the desires. You focus on the things that are important enough, because that requires courage. That requires vulnerability. That requires you to say, you know what? Neighbor, sister mom that is over there with her kids drilling and killing all the math and, all the worksheets and all of the homeschooling, go ahead, sister friend, you go right ahead, because what's important to me is that my kids learn how to make their own chalk. If that's important to you, if your kids doing all the math worksheets is also important to you, then find a way that works for you. Okay, I tend to shift to the other end myself, because of the opportunity of learning in everything around us versus the expectation of learning through certain learning circumstances. Let me unpack that a little bit. This is a little personal raid for a second. Worksheets, drill and kill, sometimes the kind of learning that is considered to be traditional learning for kids isn't always what's best for kids. I'm not saying it's not best for kids. I'm saying it isn't always what's best. So pause for a second and evaluate. If that's important to you and you're working on those things with your kiddos, then lean into this. And yes, listen to the replay. Thank you so much, Gina, for coming in. I love that you shared with us. I mean, everybody on here, we're supporting. Can everybody just throw her some hearts? Can everybody throw up some hearts or hands or thumbs up or something to Gina, because she leaned in here today. She got our conversation rolling and going. She's going to go to another meeting. But if you guys will pop in and give her a high five, give her some likes on her comment or something to let her know this is a community. We are here in this together. And we are placing our desires. We are placing what's important to us first, because we know that takes courage, and that's a chance for us to practice pivoting. How quickly we can pivot, how more skilled we are at perseverance. Okay, I like the word pivot because it reminds me of Friends. You know that scene, right? Ross and Chandler trying to get the couch up the stairs, and he's just yelling, "Pivot! Pivot!" It's what I want to yell to you all right now. Let's change. Let's persevere through this change. Let's change. Let's pivot together. Yes, I see those hearts popping up for Gina. She's going to love that when she comes back or when she sees her comments. Thanks, team. See, I knew you guys would be here for this. Perseverance, pivoting, it is a part of hope. It's a part of hope. We're gonna hope is seeing your goals ahead of you. Hope is I dropped my pen. Now I don't have anything to point with. I'll just point with my fingers. Hope is looking and saying those are my desires, and I'm headed towards those things. Hope is I'm on my path to get there. Something comes along my way, and I'm gonna shift. I'm gonna change with it because I believe I can. My shirt says it. Oh my gosh, it fits in. I didn't even mean it, you guys. I know you probably think I set these things up. It's just so natural to me at this point. And also it helps that the few print shirts I have are things that I really believe in. She believed she could, so she did. That's what it says today. The things that you believe in because you believe you can go towards those goals. That's hope. Because you believe that you have the ability, because you believe everything is figure outable. If you were here earlier, when I throw up here, I'll just show you guys. I'm here on our screen to remind us of the rising strong or the braving strong process. I called it braving strong. It's rising strong. There's an overlap of two processes there. But if you're just joining us, this is what we're leaning into this week, is unpacking the 10 rising strong. I'll edit that later. Rising strong steps process. It's a whole book. But I paused here for a second because a little bit ago the screen was glitching out and you could see in the background, which is actually a picture, behind this screen that I have for you of, oh, there she is, of Marie Forleo. And she's actually the author of the book, Everything is Figure Outable. All right, that glitch is just it's gonna get me the whole time. So if you have that hope, that means that you believe everything is figure outable. Now, parents tune in, teachers tune in, non-teachers, non-parents still stay with us, because you'll find a way. There's the way that this applies. Hope, are you ready for this? Hope is learned. When I was reviewing and I got into this last night and then again this morning, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what we all need. There's that glitch. There's Marie Forleo. This is what we all need, because everything is figure outable. It's something that you practice. You practice perseverance. You practice resilience, right? Hope is something that we also practice, and hope is something that we teach our children. Hope is something that we model for people that are around us in our lives, and hope is something that is learned. We learn through relationship. We learn about hope through relationships that have boundaries. We learn about hope through consistency, and we learn about hope through support. You all just showed up for Gina here. If you're just joining us, you missed it. We had a group moment. Gina was saying that she leaned into some of her vulnerabilities. She has to go. She's going to come back and listen to her replay. But before she left, I was like, guys, let's throw her some thumbs, let's throw her some love, put some likes on her comment so she knows that this community is here to support her, to be here. And guess what? We're here every day, Monday to Friday. And you can watch us on the weekends if you really need this consistency, which I would love to hear that this is that support. It's the consistency, and the relationship boundaries are the things that teach us about hope. And that's exactly how children learn about hope. They learn through relationship. They learn through watching us. And we've talked a lot about how us as adults, whether we were parents or teachers, even if you are in a work environment, if you're on a virtual phone call, you can still be modeling that element of hope for the people that are on your team because of the boundaries that you're willing to set. This does link into or start to overlap with what we ended up with last week, was some of those crucial conversation skills. Knowing that it takes courage and resiliency and really leaning in and building up strength for those boundaries. Because what boundaries are, let's pause here for a moment. Because if children learn what hope is through relationship boundaries, then that means that you've established some boundaries, right? And that's really chunky and thick. That's a whole week that we can work on, hours and hours of understanding and unpacking. So let's just do a high level today. Boundaries are simply what's okay and what's not okay. That's how we start with little bitty ones, on, setting those boundaries of, using physical aggression towards a sibling, towards any kind of situation, of expressing anger. Children are naturally wired. We are all naturally wired to experience anger and frustration. And the reason why they throw something, or the reason why they, hey, don't take my toy, push, is because that's that fight or flight. That's human nature in us. And so as the caregivers, as the parents, as the teachers, we end up modeling for them and showing them, you know what, it's okay that you want to play with that toy. It's not okay for you to hit someone or to throw that toy or to grab it aggressively, right? We do this for ourselves also as adults, friends, colleagues, coworkers, neighbors, people of the world, family. We set boundaries by letting people know what's okay and what's not okay with us. You can't have one without the other. You can't have boundaries without integrity. You can't have boundaries without generosity. You can't have generosity without boundaries. When I was reviewing for this, I was like, I don't know, because one of the things that Brené says that we do is that we live big, B-I-G. We have boundaries, integrity, and generosity. And I was like, okay, boundaries, I've done a lot of work on that myself. That's something that, oh my goodness, I'm going to say 15 years ago, I had to really drill in because I wasn't feeling like I was in an emotionally safe friendship. And I was at the point where I was recognizing that I was allowing someone to just stomp all over me. And I thought I was doing it as, a martyrdom sort of situation, as self-sacrifice. This person needs me to be this way. But what I was really doing was not setting safe boundaries for that person to interact with me. And when I first leaned into that boundaries, that took a lot of restructuring of, first of all, how I feel about myself. And so I spent a lot of like the reverse of letting someone walk all over you is sticking up for yourself, right? And so that was the first way that I was like, I'm just going to say no to everything, and I'm going to set that boundary. It's going to be so hard and fast that this person can't break through it. And you know what? We're not even going to talk anymore. No Facebook friends, no text messaging. Like, it's done. And this wasn't a romantic relationship. This was a friendship. And so I went really far not necessarily the wrong way, but the opposite way. And for me at that time, it needed to be that way in order for me to feel that difference and practice that setting that boundary for that person and for myself. And so the problem there is that then I got in the habit of that hard and fast boundary with lots of other people that I started to see similar behaviors that could be really detrimental to the boundary that I felt like I had set, right? And so then when it came to some people suggesting, and I started reading about effective teams, and I started to try to apply this to my work situation, and realizing that the relationships that happen at work really do, we all know this, the relationships that we have on our teams and that we have at work affect our team productivity and affect our team function and whether our team is healthy or not. And a team could be two people. And so when I started reading information and more strategies to set up a healthy environment for a team to be productive and for a team to be contributing in a positive way to the overall work environment, started reading a lot about assuming positive intentions. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. If I do that, then everybody can just walk all over me all again. And I've worked so hard to be sure that whether it's in personal relationships, which I'm still practicing, you guys, I still have to practice at that one way more than I do professional. And professional, I can pinpoint that from 50 miles away, and I can pivot and I can change and I'm so good at that. I've practiced that so much. The problem is, though, is that like when I started reading about like, oh, you have to assume positive intentions, assume the best that somebody's coming, from you. They're in this, work issue that you're having because, they have the, and I was like, why do I have to do that? Because I had been so far that way of like that really hard and fast boundary that I felt that if I was just, oh yeah, you know what? It's okay that you were 20 minutes late to that meeting. You know what? It's okay. Yes, you had to go, pick up the dry cleaning because, oh yeah, because your husband's at work. Sure, yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, and he's at work because, oh right, his boss is gonna, yeah. So you know what? It's all right. And for me, that felt really like, blech. Like, I don't want to just be handing out, like, sure, just walk all over me all the time. But what I realized is that it felt that way because I wasn't also pairing that generosity, because to me, that's what assuming positive intentions and really getting in there and recognizing that when someone presents themselves to you, it's not just that person in that moment. It's all their experiences of the day that they've had and so on and so forth. And so what I understood now what I understood then was that, and that I understand now, is that it felt to me to let someone just come in and let them, oh yeah, all the excuses, sure, no problem, because I was not pairing that generosity with boundaries. And I was not pairing that generosity of assuming and presuming the best with integrity and boundaries. They are not, you can't have one without the other, because it's mutual respect, it's mutual purpose. It's more than just assuming that someone has the best intentions. That is a part of the equation. What gets in the way here is that when we have too open boundaries, or we have no boundaries, and we just say, you know what, yes, it's 20 minutes, I understand. Husband's job, yes. Dry cleaning, oh yeah, no. When you do that, that leads to that resentment, and that leads to misunderstanding, and that leads to you having some conclusions and making some judgments about who that person is. And so I just want to read for you really quickly that when you put those three things together, it means getting clear on what things are okay and what are not okay. Boundaries, integrity, and generosity. And that integrity is the key to this consistency and this commitment, because it's how we set those boundaries and ultimately hold ourselves and others accountable for respecting them. I'm going to read this to you from the Bible because it's so profound. Living big, boundaries, integrity, generosity, is saying, yes, I'm going to be generous in my assumptions and intentions while standing solidly in my integrity and being very clear about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Which is a really great example of this in her book that follows this, and it's too long for me to read for you right now. The reason why we go down this path here is because when you're brave when you're brave enough to set those boundaries and to recognize that that's you practicing integrity, generosity, and boundaries all at once, and that you're willing to practice at that, means that you are willing to risk failure, because you won't be great at it. I'm not great at it every time. I just told you, in my personal relationships or the romantic relationships that I have, like, I am not super great at it. I have to practice intentionally every single time. Professionally, I'm in a lot more better practice at it, probably because of forced circumstances, for longer periods of time, more consistently throughout my life. Working, not in my current situation, to be clear, but previously having worked with, excuse me, very, very unhealthy, unemotionally balanced leaders in schools, and having just daily to face that and daily to say, okay, how am I going to set my boundaries today? How am I going to show up with integrity? How am I still also going to show up with generosity? Because once we're in the practice of this, that means we're practicing being brave, you guys. We're practicing standing up for ourselves, being there for ourselves, deciding that our desires for our children, for our communities, for our students is greater than the things that we would say that would shrink us and make us feel like we're less than, or to make us feel like we have to be walked all over. Yes, great. Elizabeth has a comment. She says, the second I remind myself to presume positive intentions, it usually lifts a great weight off of her shoulders. All the love on that one. Yes, Elizabeth, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to have to take a drink to clear this tickle from my throat. Let that marinate. Read Elizabeth's comments again while I take a sip, and I'll actually throw up the next. I keep saying throw up, and it's just not. While I take a sip, so you guys can preview the next elements of the Rising Strong process. Excuse me. You guys getting this one? Oh, this is one we don't like. This is why I chose a little baby chick breaking through. The little baby chick breaking through all those layers of that shell. That baby chick gets one chance to break through. And he can't go back in. You have broken through so many layers already in your life up to this point. Look at this. We're already 5 weeks in. Here in Dallas, we are at least. Some of you are further along on the other side of the world. Some of you are not as far along. We are 5 weeks into this quarantine. We've broken through some stuff. And we are never, some of us are choosing, we're like, there is no way, I am never going back. I bet some of you have even had some personal breakthroughs in your family life. Or you've pivoted and you have some new habits in your family life that you're like, there's no way, I'm never going back to that. That for your learning, for your teaching, for the learning process that your kids are experiencing. I bet you might even be thinking in some of those circumstances, there's no way, I'm never going back to that again. I'm not going back to that same freak out, run around, oh my gosh, I got to go to this practice and this lesson, and then I got to make this for dinner, and then I bet you're already like, yes, we miss that hustle and bustle, and I bet there's also an element there that says, you know what? I didn't like that anyways. I bet some of you can raise a hand to that and say, I don't ever want to go back to that. And, excuse me, at the same time, when we are in the habit, in the same way of practicing being brave, showing up, practicing those boundaries with integrity and generosity, all side by side, we can't go back. Because now we're in that practice. We have fallen. And we've gotten back up. We've had courage. And courage transforms the emotional structure of our being. Think back to a tough conversation that you've had in the past 4 weeks with your family, with your spouse, with somebody on your team. And you've had to decide, okay, this is what's important and this is what's not important. And that takes some courage, and that started to transform the emotional structure of yourself, of your relationship, of your family. And now you have this new awareness. I bet some of you have heard this before. I think it was Toni Morrison. I'm not going to quote it. I'm going to just not do that so that I don't get myself caught in a trap. But when you know better, you do better, right? You have this practice and it's always going to be there, because we are always straddling that. When we're experiencing change, we are always straddling that tension between wanting to go back to all the things that we loved, wanting to go back to what felt comfortable, wanting to go back to even that habit of the struggle. You're like, that was predictable. I knew what that was. I'm going to go back to that. We are always there on that tension between straddling the tension between wanting to go back and being pulled forward to an even greater level of courage. It's inescapable. It's inescapable, because once you're here, you got to go there. Once you've broken through the shell, you got to go to the next layer. And once you're out, guess what? Then you got to learn how to eat. You're a little baby chick. You got to go and learn how to fly. You got to learn how to walk. You got to learn how to dig in the sand for your own food. Because each challenge means that you are growing and that you are rising and that you're showing up for your families and that you're showing up for yourselves and that you're showing up for the things that are most important to you. And I know I've taken so long today. I apologize. I was so passionate. And this morning I was like, I'm going to get it done in 20 minutes. Ha! You guys. So, as we move throughout this week, remember this, that we're straddling here in our personal lives as well as professional. We're straddling here between the things that we think we want to go back to and that we do genuinely want some things, and you can put whatever you want in there, whether it's work, whether it's habits, whether it's something that is emotional, whether it's negative or positive, right? And how we also know that we can be pulled forward into greater courage. I'm going to finish with this. I don't have a fancy slide this time. I know I was going to do one, and then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to keep it old school. There's not going to be any glitching on this. This is our theme for this week. There is no greater threat. There is no greater threat to the critics, to the cynics, and to the fearmongers than those of us who are willing to fall because we have learned to rise. There it is. There's no greater threat to the critics, to the cynics, and the fearmongers than those of us who are willing to fall because we've learned to rise. And you know what you can't do when you're rising strong? You can't run. We can't rise strong when we're on the run. So we're showing up here every day to Parent Power Hour. And sometimes we got to go to a meeting and press pause and come back and finish. But we're showing up and we're learning to rise. Learning to rise. Not rising consistently every single time without failure. No. Learning to rise. There's so many critics. There's so many cynics. There's so many fearmongers. Can I get an amen on a Monday? Out in this world right now. And there's no greater threat to them than we here, than those of us here who are willing to fall because we have learned to rise. I won't play it for you because it's not copyright free, but if you're feeling this, I want you to go and listen to the song. It's called Rise Up by Andra Day. That's all I'm going to say. If you're feeling it, that song, listen to that song is going to make you feel it to the next level. Rise Up by Andra Day, Andra, A-N-D-R-A. Andra Day. Look it up, sit with it, and I want to see in your comments what happens. Physically, mentally, emotionally, what happens for you. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This is Parent Power Hour. I'm Kristen. Your comments are strength to all of us. Your likes are helping to share these tips and tools with others around you that you care for. Thank you for showing up for yourselves today. And here we are this week. We're going to be unpacking all 10 of the steps of the Rising Strong process. I hope that you found something that inspired you, that has led you to a new level of learning, and continue to cultivate your passions until they become your talent. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you tomorrow.